Hey, lovely people. I have a little quick, I guess, like a hot take for you guys. I just went and saw Halloween Kills. And I'm just home from the movies now. Smell of popcorn still fresh in my nostrils. So I love a slasher franchise, especially like a vintage one. I've seen all of the Halloween films. I do have a post about them on the blog, which I used a bit more before I started this channel. I still use it, but I mean, it's got lots of stuff on there. So I'll put a link for that below in case you guys want a viewing guide. Because it's fun when franchises are this long to kind of see all the weird places that they have been over the last, what, like 78 till now. I mean, that's a good amount of time. So yeah, I like the Halloween franchise. I just like horror franchises. So Halloween Kills is kind of probably about what you would expect. So yeah, it has a really nice opening credits, opening sequence. It's got the classic piano riff theme song that we know and love, and it has a credit sequence which harks back to the first movie with the Halloween pumpkin and the font and that slight like sfumato effect that film cameras had at that time with their credits. It's lovely. The sound design throughout the whole thing I really liked. I think it's pretty solid. So stylistically, this film works, but only stylistically. The Jason mask is a little beaten up by this time, but he still has that real stillness and the blankness of features from the mask, but the way there's, sometimes they just put a little head tilt in there, or like the way he'll turn his head has a kind of curiosity to it. It's like, I think that's a really chilling thing about Michael Myers, and it's here in this film, and that sort of works. The problem is, there's actually a lot of problems. So I guess let's kind of start at the top. Something that they did with this film is that when you think back to where these films started, they're teens in a house being menaced by Michael in his mask, escaped from hospital, right? A lot of these franchise films are a series of people being menaced by the evil character or whatever. I can't think of the word. Antagonist, I guess we could use. Here, they kind of change that around. So one of the things I think works so well in those old films is the anticipation. Like, we know the bad guy's in the house, and you're sort of like yelling at the characters like, don't go that way, or he's behind you, or whatever, right? Like, so there's a lot of tension created that way, a lot of build up, and then you have these kind of extravagant, kind of silly death scenes. And this film does not have that. This film has there's a couple of teenage characters from the previous Halloween film, the one just before this one, but they kind of don't really get given that much to do. It's mostly middle-aged people, and I was kind of thinking that maybe this is to appeal to the people that would have seen the original movies in the cinema or something, or like maybe at home, but like in their youth, because that's probably about the right age group, right? But I don't know that those people are necessarily going to go and see this film, or that they would go to the cinema to see a horror film. Like, it felt just like an odd choice. And I think it's because the actors just weren't that great. So there's a group of people from the town of Haddonfield, and they were there, in their past when this all started, and it's sort of like, oh, they're back, but like, it just feels irrelevant somehow. Just, I don't know. So yeah, and when those people they kind of form a vigilante mob, I guess, or teams, and they kind of go around like, oh, we're gonna stop the evil or whatever. And they're just not believable because they've got like bear guts and stuff. Like, they're not gonna stop anything, you know? So yeah, and then when they do get attacked, there's not a lot of inventiveness. And the other thing I noticed was once Michael Myers was sort of within stabbing distance of somebody, they may have a weapon in their hand, but they're not going to use it. Like, so they're going after him, but like when they get close to him, they seem to just like forget what they came for and just let him, you know, kill them. And there was no like inventiveness there, which I think was no tension, no inventiveness, you know? The dialogue made no sense. There were so many things where I was like, what does that mean? Why are you saying it? Why are you repeating it? That literally makes no sense. There's somebody said something in the film about like, oh, he gets you when you're alone, but like all through the film up until that point, he's gotten groups of people. I was like, okay. So nobody's reaction shot matched up with what the person had just said to them. And their responses didn't match up with what was happening in the conversation. So it felt like it was written by a committee and nothing made sense. Nothing really happens in this movie. It opens at the end. Well, there's like an opening sequence that's sort of happens, but the main plot line starts at the end, picking up at the end of the last film, which is something that the sequel did back in the first two films. And I was like, that's a nice touch. But then they just go to hospital, which also the second film, I'm pretty sure, takes place in a hospital. And then nothing happens. Like, people just yell a lot. And they yell incoherently. So yeah, like, I guess the previous film, at the end, they think they've killed Michael Myers. Obviously they haven't. And then they go to hospital because they're injured. Then they talk about leaving the hospital. Some of them do, some of them don't. Then the whole town kind of ends up at the hospital and they're all just like yelling, and there's this kind of mob rule thing, which I guess could be like a reference to like COVID or something. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of like referencing the evil in the world and panic responses. But I'm like, it doesn't really make any sense. Like, it's just bizarre. And then Jamie goes to leave, but then she just comes back to the room that she left and she has a conversation with some guy, and it's just kind of like that. Like, it just, I mean, I've seen Hallmark movies that had better dialogue and the plots made more sense. Like, it was really quite an incoherent film. There is a nice couple of characters who I thought were really kind of fun. There's a gay couple that have moved into Michael Myers' old house, and they've done a lot of work on it, and it's really nice on the inside. It's got this amazing wallpaper that I just kept thinking like, wow, I really like that wallpaper. And they're just funny. One of them's, I think they're both called John, so they call each other Big John and Little John, which just kind of tickled me. I don't know, I just thought they were like nice, you know, those kind of people where you're like, I bet they're kind of nosy neighbors, or like, but nice people, you know. Obviously moving into Michael Myers' house, even if you do change the wallpaper, is probably not the best idea. So I won't spoil anything for you there, but I wish that they'd done a little bit more with them, because I just liked them. I just thought they were cool, and if they had been, I mean, they get a little bit of screen time, but it's sort of, I don't know, I guess we just get to know them so that some stuff can happen, you know? I don't know, you could have had the whole film with them as the main characters and I would have been really happy. I just thought they were cool. What else? Jamie Lee Curtis is in this movie. She's given nothing to do. She's probably the best thing in this film. Her and Michael Myers themselves are good. She is committed. She's Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, I love her. She just she's a professional, and I feel like she's so good, and she throws herself into this role. I feel like she's having a fairly good time. They just don't give her anything to do. Like, they take her to hospital, and then she talks about some stuff, and then she goes to leave, and then she just talks about stuff that's not really hey Grimmy, my cat's here. Like, it's just, she's just talking. What is the point? So yeah, I mean, there's so many things they could have done with her, and I guess, I don't know, just felt like this movie was written by committee. So yeah, is it any good? I mean, to be honest, the film before this one was not very good. And again, Jamie Lee Curtis was the best thing in it. And actually, I think the previous one was a little bit better than this one. But it's that classic thing where you're like, what is happening? Why is it happening? Like, I just kept thinking, so everyone knows that this guy is like a supernatural force at this point that can't be killed. But nobody is doing any kind of like research into what has happened and why, and like maybe what they could do about it. Like, even like characters in the film are like, you can't kill this guy. And then somebody would just be like, I'm gonna go kill him. And you're like, were you not listening? Like, you're in a different movie? Like, what is happening? One lady in the movie as well says, like, what happened to this town? I've lived here my whole life, and this used to be a safe town. And I was like, well, then you couldn't have been living in Haddonfield, because this is like, I don't even know how many films we are into this franchise now, like 10 or something. So yeah, I have to say, I went into this movie, you know, if it was going to be a good entry into the franchise, that's great. I don't expect a lot of franchise films in general, horror franchise films maybe especially. I'm just there to sort of have fun, maybe laugh at some of the side characters, you know what I mean? That kind of like, for example, actually, there's a bit where a mob goes into the hospital, right? And they're chasing this guy. I won't say, like, you know, what it's about or whatever, because it's about the middle of the film. I won't spoil it. But so basically there's a mob going down the hallway and crazy shit is happening. And there's just this one guy in a bright shirt. Everybody else is like, angry mob, you know? And he's just in the middle of him, like, clapping his hands. Like, he's like, oh my God, you know, like when you're about to open a present at Christmas. Like, he's like, oh, we're in an angry mob, guys. Like, it's really funny. He's on screen for like, I don't know, a second at the most in the middle of a bunch of people. But he just stood out to me so much because I was like, this guy is here for this. He's waited his whole life for an angry mob. It's just funny. But yeah, generally speaking, I think if you go into this movie knowing what to expect, you'll probably enjoy yourself. It's not meant to be anything too serious. I think it takes itself a little bit seriously, which is unusual for horror franchises. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like if you go see it at the cinema, you might be disappointed. But at the same time, I know cinemas are struggling, and I don't like to tell people to not see movies at the movies, you know, because it's, yeah, I mean, obviously some of you guys might have different restrictions where you are and stuff like that, but our cinemas are very safely open again, and like they're very careful and stuff, and I feel safe going with the, you know, they have a program in place to keep people safe, and I think it's really good. But yeah, I don't know. I guess you'll have to make your own mind up as to whether it just doesn't feel like as, it's not as much fun as previous entries. It doesn't have tension. It's incoherent. And so I think if you wanted to see like a film like in a horror franchise, you could watch any of the older previous entries in this that are a lot more fun. They're a lot more gleeful, they're a lot more silly, they're a lot more even just like linear in a way that makes sense. And I think you get what you pay for with those films. Like, you're expecting a slasher film with some silliness, and that's, you know, maybe gonna like be a little scary, but you know, it's kind of like a bit silly as well in a good way. Whereas this film just is dour. Like, there's no joy in this film for like the horror film as a genre art form or whatever. It doesn't have that passion for its subject. It just feels bland, flat, incoherent. I'd have to say I had fun seeing it because I was kind of laughing at it a little bit. But Jamie Lee is really good in this. They just kind of failed to make a good Michael Myers film. And even a bad Halloween film is kind of good. This one is just a bit nothing. So yeah, that's my little take on Halloween Kills. If you guys disagree or you saw something else in the background or whatever that I missed or something, like some little moment, please tell me, because that's always fun. And yeah, happy Halloween.